The next point is, can we share my reports? Is to go to all the presentations from the competition submissions. There are 8, and each one has 8 minutes each. That's 2 times each. So these were submissions to competitions. And again, I would like to thank the sponsors that are here who are supporting the winners of the competition. The first presentation of the submissions is by Nanbai from HEVA. There are more, you can find all these slides also on the Miro board. Please have a look there. And also there are more extensive bios of all the speakers in this presentation that you can also further explore, and information how to contact them. If you have any question, please ask. Nanbai, the floor is yours for the first one. I think the first one is Venice and its Lagoon. And Paris, banks of the Seine, Italy and France. Social inclusion of culture, heritage planning.
Hi.
Yes.
Thank you, Kay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nanbai, a PhD candidate in Department of Architectural Engineering and Technology, Faculty Architecture and Built Environment, HU Delft in the Netherlands, and I'm originally from China. And it is really an honor for me to represent our team to give a presentation on this Globinar about our proposal for the competition about information technology. And our team HEVA, or Heritage and Values, is an international research group based in Europe. And this proposal, with the name of Social Inclusion in Cultural Heritage Planning, Mapping Perceived Heritage Values Using User-Generated Content in Social Media Platform, is part of my PhD research supported by the Harryland College of Cultural Heritage Planning under the EU Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. And next, please. This research seeks to answer the question, what are the characteristics and the mechanisms of emergent social inclusion in the social media platforms, about cultural heritage properties, and how to improve the social inclusion in future planning. Next, please. It is a highly interdisciplinary research combining methodologies from computer science, social sciences, mathematics, spatial analysis, and cultural studies as well. Next, please. Yeah. In this short presentation, I would like to mainly talk about the intuition and motivation of conducting such research. As someone within the Our World Heritage Network, I believe that many audience today still remember the tragic fire took place in Notre Dame, Paris in April 2019. This sad information totally occupied the news for a few days and stimulated the people all over the world to show their cares and concerning and express their sorrows on all social media platforms. While we look at the total percentage of search worldwide recorded by Google Trend, we'll see that 4 of the major heritage properties share the interest of online community evenly from 2015 to 2020. Next, please. However, if we add Notre Dame to the search, the extreme focus on it when the fire happened diminished all the other interests on a relative scale. And next, please. We can borrow the concept from neuroscience and call the 2 situations baseline and activated. While some radical events happen, the concern of a broader group of citizens are triggered and activated, and this makes the world fully connected, like a small world with so much common concerns. And next, please. A similar pattern can be traced in a variety of social media platforms, including Facebook, TripAdvisor, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, 500px, and so many more. And during everyday situation, a normal situation, people generally share their experience and stories about the cultural heritage on a daily basis, while if they are activated, the online community became explosively intense to both share the emotions and give constructive concerns about heritage management and planning topics, such as whether there should be a restoration or redesign in Notre Dame, for example. Next, please. And next. And next. And there is something more to say, to argue about this small world, as we can see as further proof in Google Trend when we look at the dominant searching keywords among the 5 cultural heritage properties. We can see that 1 year before and 1 year after the fire, the search interests globally are more diverse, and that during the outburst of the fire, almost the whole globe focused on Notre Dame. Next, please. The difference between the both situation is our main interest. The first would be the ordinary everyday scenario when people normally express their opinions and love for the World Heritage properties. And the second would be the event-triggered activated scenario when people extensively discuss their emotions and constructive suggestions. And we're really curious to see the difference, different focuses, mechanisms, and patterns as we are able to map those observations from the social media data. And what we also need to stress is that this triggering event doesn't have to always be negative. As such, our proposal is potential to also be applied in different World Heritage sites. As another example, we are now working on a case of Venice. And here you can also see a similar differentiation between baseline and activation. At least 2 peaks of discussions could be observed in 2019 to 2020. The first one being about the severe flood happened in November 2019, and the second being about the dolphins found in the canals in March 2020. Remarkably, one of the events is negative and the other is, well, quite positive. We propose to use Flickr and Twitter to collect data of everyday and activated situation respectively, with the help of artificial intelligence algorithms, including natural language processing, image captioning, image recognition, and graph neural network models. We have the chance to process large-scale data of World Heritage sites on social media platform and construct mathematical models and map the observed properties from the users from the online communities. So we are really looking forward to what we'll find in the end as well. But now it is really getting started. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was very interesting, also a little bit tragic about the fires. We're moving to the next one. This is Javier Ortega from UMingo. We'll talk about Archaeological Museum of Carmo, the old convent of Carmo in Lisboa in Portugal. Research projects on the Archaeological Museum of Carmo. Thank you very much, Nanbay, for your talk. And Javier Ortega, yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me also to share with you part of the research work that we carry out at the University of Minho in the field of conservation of the built heritage. I would like to present today the work that we have developed at the Archaeological Museum of Carmo, which is the former church of the convent of Carmo and is located in Lisbon, in Portugal. The museum and the old church is not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, actually. It is not classified as such, but the ruins of the museum are a major tourist attraction of the city, and it receives thousands of visitors during the year. The church was originally built in the 14th century. You can see here a picture of it, and is the biggest Gothic church in the city of Lisbon. It has always been a landmark for the inhabitants of the city. But maybe one of the most significant aspects of the monument is that it was hit by 2 major earthquakes that occurred in Lisbon in 1531 and in 1755. After the first one, several parts of the church were severely damaged, but they were repaired and mostly the church was reconstructed. However, the church almost fully collapsed after the famous 1755 earthquake. And reconstruction works followed almost immediately after the earthquake. They managed to rebuild the columns and some of the arches of the old naves, as you can see in the picture here. But the reconstruction was never completed. So it led to the current romantic state of ruin of the church that we can see now. Nowadays, the ruins of Carmo are this impressive open space, and it kind of became the symbol of the 1755 Lisbon earthquake. I should highlight that this earthquake was such a catastrophic and important event that it had a profound impact on Europe in many ways. It influenced the philosophical and the political thinking of the era, but it also led to some to the development of the seismology and even the first, let's say, the first steps of earthquake engineering. So it is really an important event, and this church became maybe very famous as a symbol of it. So maybe this heritage site is also important because it serves as a reminder of earthquakes and the destructive capacity. But maybe more than 250 years have passed since the earthquake, and we are losing the seismic awareness. And if we don't protect our heritage, this is very likely to occur also in the future. So maybe you can pass to the next slide. Thank you. This is an example of the work that we have been doing now. This site is currently owned and managed by the Association of Portuguese Archaeologists, who turned the old church into the current Archaeological Museum of Carmo. And during the last years, we have taken advantage of the availability and the kindness of this association that has always opened the door to us, and we have used the site almost as a testing ground for our research activities. Typically, we have developed these activities within the framework of a master course, an international master course we have, which is the SAC master course, which is dedicated to educate students on the engineering of conservation of historical structures and monuments. And we have used the building as a case study where students can go and have hands-on experience on common activities that are associated to a conservation project. Here are some examples, as I was saying, of the work carried out by students at the museum. They are able to explore and learn how to use specialized techniques for the structural diagnosis and analysis of historical monuments, going from detailed geometrical survey, damage survey, non-destructive evaluation, and advanced structural analysis. For us, this accessibility to heritage sites is essential because it allows us to develop and test improved strategies for the analysis of structures. But it also allows us to bring these monuments closer to students so they can study them in detail, touch them, and experiment with the use of state-of-the-art techniques. Eventually, the aim of these projects are that the students acquire the necessary skills to become experts on conservation engineering. We believe also that this collaboration between heritage site managers and owners and the university or whatever other research institution is very important to disseminate and raise awareness on heritage preservation. But besides this experience, if you can pass to the next slide, please. Okay, yes. So besides the experience within the masters, we are also developing a research project that I would like to discuss a little bit about with you today. This is the Heritage Within European Research Project. And as it is here stated, the objective of the project is to develop new inspection and presentation strategies for the cultural heritage. Essentially, we are aiming to produce an innovative visualization of the cultural heritage by offering a full 3D reconstruction that also includes the interior of the constructive elements. For that reason, we have gathered a multidisciplinary team. We are a group of architects, engineers, physicists, art historians, and we are developing new inspection systems that allow us to see what is commonly hidden to our naked eye, such as the interior boundaries of the construction elements. I don't know if you can click and maybe show the video. So we can show you the automatic acoustic tomography system that we have developed within the project. And this is the system in action in the on-site works that we carried out last November. The idea is to test its capabilities to document the interior of the construction elements so we can later reconstruct them on almost a stone-by-stone basis. Together with more standard geometrical surveying tools, we expect to have this full 3D reconstruction of the monuments that includes also the interior of the monument. This knowledge, we believe, is very useful for us as conservators for documentation purposes, of course, but also to take informed decisions on how to intervene on the building and better understand its structural behavior. This is a pilot experience. And again, this collaboration is offered by the site owners is essential for this. But also one basic idea of the project and all the work that we have been doing is also to transmit this knowledge to the general public. So our idea is to insert this information into an augmented reality application, so we can offer this unique visualization of our heritage, and the visitor on site will be able to visualize also the interior of the construction elements and the columns, which will provide him or her with a unique didactic experience that will highlight the construction know-how of our ancient builders and will help understanding how the monuments were precisely constructed in the past. And this last slide also shows that we aim to engage visually with the general public to offer a unique visualization of the monument, but we want to involve also the site owners. So the objective of the projects were also reassessed, taking into account the vision of the site managers. And we take into account their vision on how to innovate at the level of the visiting experience. For example, after discussing with them, we noticed that it was very important for them to show the visitors what the building was like in the past, because they noticed that normally the visitors did not fully understand it. Many of them did not conceive that they were on the nave of the old church. They thought they were in the cloister, for example, because they didn't understand the ruin. So we are also working with historians for the museum, and we aim to create a 3D digital model that represents several construction phases of the building, including also the original state. So then, implemented into an augmented reality application, the visitors will be also able to understand how the building was before it was destroyed by the earthquake. So that's basically everything that I wanted to share with you. Just we believe this approach can be replicated in other heritage sites, but we believe that this collaboration between managers and research institutions is essential. So we need heritage sites to be accessible and open, and research institutions and universities also involve stakeholders since the beginning and understand their needs. So thank you very much for your attention. That will be so.
Thank you very much, Javier. Beautiful presentation and amazing technology that's being shown here. I'm always very amazed as a nature person. I'm always very impressed by the 3D models in these presentations. We don't use them so much for nature monitoring. The next presentation is by Stephanie Wynne-Jones, and this is Sustainable Technologies and Conservation of Community Integration in the Kilwa, Kisiwani, and Songo Mnara, United Republic of Tanzania.
That's right. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be here today. I feel a little bit like an interloper, actually, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm not a heritage professional. I'm an archaeologist, and I've worked in Tanzania for about 25 years now. I'm also not that technologically advanced, but I'm going to argue that that is a benefit in this region. So I work, and I have worked over the course of the last 20 years or so at and around the sites of Kilwa, Kisiwani and Songo Mnara, which are jointly a World Heritage Site on the southern coast of Tanzania. And they're the setting for some fantastic standing architecture, which dates mainly to the 14th and 15th centuries, which you can see briefly in this slide. But they were inscribed on the World Heritage List partly for this fantastic example of Swahili architecture, as it's called, on the East African coast, but also partly because of their unique archaeological significance and their importance to world history. They have been on the list of sites in danger. They were actually recently taken off the list of sites in danger after a series of conservation campaigns that have been conducted at these sites. And so we have this pair of towns on islands just off the coast of southern Tanzania. They have a fantastic architectural and archaeological resource. And I have mainly been there working in an archaeological capacity, particularly at Songo Mnara, investigating some of the history and archaeology of those sites. But they've also been the setting for a lot of heritage work and a lot of investment, in particular a lot of restoration work, with notable campaigns funded by the World Bank, a campaign by the World Monuments Fund, which actually sort of built and shored up a lot of the architecture. You can see the Great Mosque at Kilwa on this slide. And all those domes were actually restored and rebuilt about 10 years ago by the World Monuments Fund campaign. So there's been a lot of work at the sites, but it has mainly focused on this standing architecture. And despite the fact that the sites have got this inscription because of their archaeological significance as well, the focus in terms of heritage investment has always been on preserving the buildings. They are now at quite a good stage of preservation, and the challenges now are more about monitoring and ongoing conservation and presentation of these sites to a broader public. I should also say, as you can see on the right, there have also been quite a lot of interventions in the form of laser scanning projects at these sites. I can name 4 laser scanning projects that have happened at Kilwa for conservation, ostensibly for conservation reasons, in the last 6 years. But as I've been working there over the sort of longer term, working with communities and working with colleagues in the Kilwa region, I've sort of watched these heritage projects come and go, and the same problems really have remained. The standing architecture is now sort of, as I said, quite well restored. But there's this sort of twin problem in Kilwa. One is a lack of infrastructure for the monitoring of this work. And so there's these wonderful laser scans, these sort of high-tech interventions. But then what do the local heritage professionals and site managers do with those 3D scans? And the answer is sort of nothing, actually. There's also a lack of engagement of local communities with the site, and all the projects that have run here do interviews, do focus groups, and talk about that lack of engagement and the fact that local communities don't really feel that they're getting anything from the site. So the current project that I'm talking about is a bit of a different, bit of a departure for me, and it's been quite a humbling experience because I've mostly done research at the site, and I always thought I'd worked in a really good way doing lots of outreach, and then when I came back to do a heritage project and conducted focus groups with local people, they all said, oh yeah, we've got no idea what you used to do here. So I obviously wasn't doing quite as well as I used to, as I thought I was. But so I've been working with colleagues, particularly Sarah Perry, who's the Director of Research at Museum of London Archaeology, and a colleague of mine, Dav Smith, who's a buildings archaeologist, as well as colleagues Elinazam Gemma at the University of Dar es Salaam, who's a heritage professional working on the coast, and Mercer Mbogela in particular, the site manager at Kilwa. And what we've been trying to do, oh, sorry, can you move to the next slide? What we've been trying to do is to develop a project that instead of sort of, you know, high-tech interventions to try and sort of map these sites or build sort of 3D models, we have gone back to basics and asked groups in the Kilwa region what they would like to gain from these heritage sites on their doorstep. And so we wanted to co-create some priorities with a range of groups who are represented in very small text here, but you can see we've worked with obviously the site managers and the heritage professionals in Kilwa, but also local representatives of community organisations, and also local businesses, hotel owners, tour guides, small businesses who all are operating sort of in the vicinity of this World Heritage Site, but are not really integrated into the ways that it's presented. And we conducted some pilot work to find out what they wanted and what would be really valued in the region. And we came up with a plan which is quite simple, really. It's a twofold plan. If we go to the next slide, which involves ongoing monitoring of the sites using sustainable digital tools. So rather than laser scanning, we've actually been conducting quite a lot of training in using photogrammetry. And you can see here, this is a 3D image of a wattle and daub house at the site, which we created just using structure from motion photogrammetry, and then built using MeshLab back in the Antiquities office. And so we've been training the site managers to use photogrammetry, to leave them with what they need to do to keep doing that work as an ongoing sort of way of monitoring the sites, rather than sort of one-off interventions that then have no follow-up. And we came to photogrammetry as a very sort of straightforward and also easily implementable technology in the region. And then the other thing we've actually been doing is working with local communities, all these different sort of stakeholder groups, on using web technologies and social media to create input into some of the ways that these sites are presented. And in particular, we work with the tour guides, set up Facebook pages, started creating Instagram posts and TikTok videos, and ran a whole load of training in technologies which could then be taken up by groups locally and sort of carried on into the future. And it's been lovely, actually, to have sort of voices from the community that lives in and among the ruins represented in some of the ways that the sites are presented. And they have some very simple requests for things like saying hello when you pass the person that lives next to the Great Mosque, and not just walking past. And previously those sort of voices were not part of the way the heritage was presented, but those sort of web technologies allow that more sort of local input. So we still have some work to do. We can go to the next slide. We conducted the focus groups and we did some basic training, but we need to go back, and particularly for the photogrammetry, to do a lot more intense work, and to really embed those technologies into the day-to-day work of our colleagues at the Antiquities Department. But we're really enthusiastic about the ways that some of those quite simple and sustainable technologies have been taken up locally, just to sort of shift the conversation around the sites away from just the conservation of the architecture and more into sort of integrating sustainable technologies into the day-to-day life of the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Asante sana for this very nice
Karibu.
The next presentation is by Alzbeta Rejentova on Vienna Historical Center in Austria, mapping and crowdsourcing. Oh.
Yes, hello.
Correct. And Aristotelis, I don't know who is presenting.
Both.
We can do both in canon. Okay, go ahead. Please, I would ask everyone to stick to the 8 minutes because we're running a bit late, and it means we'll have to cut from our next activity. So if you can stick to the 8 minutes, I'd be very happy. Very much. Go ahead.
So again, thank you first of all for inviting us to present our project proposal for the competition. So we have an architectural background with Alzbeta, and we are collaborating with the Technical University of Vienna for this project that deals with a crowdsourcing platform and like mapping cultural heritage. So to start with, like in 2017, like when Vienna and the Historical Center was listed like as one of the World Heritage in danger due to high-rising projects that had happening there. So at this point, there was like a big public discussion between different like fields and sectors on trying like to give a solution to the problem. And there were a lot of voices, especially from communities, that they were raised against this development. So we were start like thinking like how we could like raise awareness like to the risk like of spoiling like these values of cultural and natural heritage. Next one, please. So here we have like a schematic methodological system of how data moves like in a platform between like the different sectors. Like we know, like in Vienna, there are a lot of industries that has to do a lot with tourism. We have like the communities and like the local communities actually. We have also a lot of scholars and scientific communities bringing data. And also we have the people. So we're trying to find a way and see like how we can link all these users in a platform, and how we could give like a holistic view to a problem that is happening in a cultural heritage site. So on the right side also you can see like some info that we try to implement in the website. So some like 3D like surveys and morphological analysis and cartography, and that's that is given like from Professor Angelica Seine, that is also our curator. So we were trying to implement like all these different qualities of the data like in one place.
Okay, so this is our pilot project, which is a website which we called Heritage for People. This platform, it is a platform which links all the data according to the previous methodological system as Ari introduced. And we categorized the data which we have, like you can see on the left side of this slide. We have different categories. One of them is basic information, data about tourism, scientific data, also information about the law protection data, events, or space for communities. This platform is based on mapping and cartographic systems, because we noticed there is in Vienna at least, there is lack of using new technologies, and also lack of new and ongoing projects which are included in this GIS platforms, for example. So our approach is to include the real and ongoing projects, and also, for example, in form of these events, as you can see on the right side. There we have an example with festivals, public discussions, where you can see them on this platform. So it is to give help achieving a holistic view on the living space of cultural heritage and the potential problems raised by different groups of inhabitants. Here you can see another example how our platform can be implemented in different countries or cities. It is very easy. So the other example pops up on the map. You can click on it, and on the left you can see the historical city center of Vienna. This is our primary example, and on the right side we have the Sun Temple. There is also another very important approach of our project, which is the linking of users, so the crowdsourcing. You can see on the bottom right of the in the picture on the right side, there is a space for users, so everyone can sign in and become a member of this platform, and we want people to bring in the data to this platform. So you can, as a normal user, you can see all the data and contact and network with the other users. So in this platform, we try to respond to the needs of mapping the changes and the road of the historical sites that tries to harmonize to the new needs of the modern technological urban center. We think that the essence of outstanding universal value is changing as the new technological tools are developed in such a way to fulfill the new needs of the human relationships. cultural heritage is based on human interactions, and as the latter is changing forms during the years, cultural heritage needs to respond and to find the next steps, humanizing interaction into the future IT field. So this platform is like a response to this issue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alzbeta. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Aristotelis for your wonderful presentation. We have two more presentations. So the next one is Rosie Mercer, Friends of the Falls, who will talk about role of access control, improving the monitoring and interpretation of the heritage site in Mosi-Oa-Tunya National Park, Victoria Falls. I would like to ask the next two speakers to try to work within 6 minutes because we're running almost an hour late. So to make sure we have enough time for the breakout rooms and discussions later, please compile. I will give you a reminder after 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rosie Mercer, one of the members of the Friends of the Falls organization. Looking at Mosi-Oa-Tunya Victoria Falls, I think it doesn't really need much of an introduction. I think most people around the world know of it, but we have some serious challenges, which I've listed here. We have lack of maintenance and lack of improvements in the site over many years. We have very poor interpretive presentation and very little infrastructure in order to do such. These really are a result of lack of income. 3 and 4 are more institutional issues. There's very limited community engagement in the decision-making process as to what to do with the falls site. And we also have issues of staff willingness to engage in behavior change strategies. And the last one is government policy. All the receipts from many of its institutions are centralized, and then the actual site only gets a small grant in return. So our technologies that we want to introduce are the following: much improved integrated electronic ticketing and access control system, website, obviously with live streaming webcam images, and then lots of social media links, and cloud hosting of our information. Next slide, please. The main aim of what we want to do is actually to enhance the overall experience for all visitors to the Mosi-Oa-Tunya site, and at the same time try to secure its future. And for visitors, I want you to understand that we are looking not just at the visitors who physically come to the site, but those who want to look at it from afar, but can't, because we have very little information even on the internet. Why is access control so important? Well, for us, we know it will improve and protect revenue. There are many ways in which members of staff at the site manage to do side deals with various tour operators and other people to avoid the fees being collected. It will help us to improve our understanding of visitors. In other words, who are they? Where have they come from? Are they children? Are they adults? Where do they actually spend most of their time on the site? You know, is it looking at the waterfall or is it at the curio market? And we want to use this information to really manage the visitors and bring about a really good improved experience. Our numbers currently are very difficult to determine. This leads to a problem in getting the allocations for maintenance because we can't prove how many people are tramping over our paths or leaning against our balustrades. And we don't want the experience to just be looking at the waterfall. Next slide. At the top, you'll see I put visitors, bring in forward revenue, then improvements, interpretation, promotion, and maintenance. We want to grow local, national, and global community. So the electronic ticketing system that we're looking at, as soon as it's scanned on entry into the site, there will be links to the individual social media platforms, which will shout out, hey, Rosie's at Victoria Falls. We'll have webcams at strategic points, so that throughout the year, people can appreciate the huge differences in the viewing that you have at the falls. Right now, you can see very little. It's so huge, full of water, that it's all spray. Later on, you'll be able to see right down into the bottom of the gorge. Website itself, we want to produce a host of geographical, historical, cultural information, and we want to gather them from the community that's actually longest linked to the site. And in this regard, Chief Makuni, who owns the site in terms of traditional land access, is very keen on what we're trying to do. The website will also have functions such as pre-booking tickets. We'll be able to audit any allocations of tickets that we give to hotels or other businesses. We'll have QR linked sources of information where our visitors can access more information and can also give us reviews and comments on their experience. So last slide. We believe that this does apply to many other World Heritage sites. Revenue collection is obviously one of the critical activities that we need to do. Understanding who's coming to visit us and how we can manage that, and manage the virtual visitors as well. And we want to also see investment in the local community. And one example would be that on production of your entry ticket into Victoria Falls, you can maybe access discounts in some of the town businesses, such as restaurants and other facilities. And the webcam and the website basically allows all of these other facilities that I've mentioned. Live streaming, can we see any evidence of climate change happening? We can engage schools and community groups much more. We can have research happening, and we can also bring the local community much more into the picture. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rosie. That was very nice. Next, the last one for this part of the session is Sarath Chandra on the Hampi World Heritage Site, Alzbeta, Karnataka in India. Integrated management plans.
Yeah, hi, thanks for inviting me to, can you hear me?
Almost not. Could you come a bit closer to the microphone? Yeah. Okay, now it's okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me for to present what we are doing in Hampi. I mean, just to give you a brief, Hampi is a large World Heritage site spread over 41.8 square kilometers, the core area. And it's predominantly a mixture of natural and cultural site, but the site is nominated for its group of monuments only currently. What you see on the first slide is the management framework, what has been given as part of the management plan by Professor Thakur and her team. Now, if you see in this, Hampi is a living heritage site also. There are 60,000 people living in the World Heritage Site, and there are continuing traditional practices like rituals, like continuing water systems which are used for irrigation, and continuing mobility systems which are crossing across the river. And there is a whole lot of road network and a lot of other areas where, like, I mean, there is continuing agricultural practices since last 400-500 years, which again has a conflict with the archaeological remains underneath. So the management framework in this, you could see various sectors, subsectors, and various support sectors, and which has been divided wholly into as a core, general, and integrative management. So each of these has nearly 10 to 20 departments working responsible for each of these ones. In fact, Hampi was put in endangered list in 1999 because of unplanned developments which happened there, and the result of which is this management framework and the management plan, because of which an institution for the first time in India was created to manage a World Heritage Site, which is known as Hampi World Heritage Area Management Authority. The key objective of this management authority is to bring in convergence so that there is a cohesive integrative planning. Now, one of the first findings of this is each of the stakeholder, including the local community living, including all the departments responsible for the management of the all these different kinds of management, have a different understanding. Each one has a different understanding of what is this World Heritage, what is heritage, what are the OUVs of the site. So that's when it was decided that an integrated information management system has to be prepared. So that's when, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so that's when each of the sectoral information using a GIS system was prepared. The idea is to have all the decision makers, including the local community, have the same level, same kind of information for decision making on what kind of management, what kind of protection, and what kind of development should happen. So some of the key tasks in the operational plan now, what has been decided, what is being implemented from 2020 to 2025 are these: information acquisition and organization, information management, and information dissemination using these various subtasks. There is so much of information which has, in fact, Hampi is one of the best documented and research site in this region. There is so much of information, but nothing was available for the management of the site. So that was the first task. So we had to put all the archaeological research and done by various historians, art historians, archaeologists, all of them into this system, so that there is a uniform level of information which is available to all decision makers. And then how are we going to manage these information? Again, we developed protocols. We are in the process of developing protocols, and we are coming out with this interface. It's not only just one way of giving information to all the decision makers, but also a feedback from all the departments. Can we go to the next slide, please? Just to give you an example of the scale of the complexity we work with, within the 41.8 square kilometers, this is hardly 11.8 square kilometers, which is identified as an archaeological park. Within this, there are 58 national monuments, 1,600 state monuments, and 33,000 cultural features, which denote the activity during the Vijayanagara period for which the site, the OUV of the site the site is nominated for. And apart from this, there is intangible heritage and there is natural heritage. So this is a kind of attributes which makes this as a World Heritage site, which has multiple departments, multiple stakeholders responsible for its protection, management, and development. So that's where we bring in the Hampi World Heritage Area Management Authority is trying to have this information system, or is already building up this information system, so that there is uniform decision making. Okay, next please. Next slide. The last slide shows actually the simplest interface, user interface developed with this, one of the simplest, because 10 years back, farmers used to walk into our office and say, "Ki UNESCO has taken our land because we were not, they were not being permitted." The officials responsible for not allowing development or regulating development were simply putting blame on someone who are not there on site. So they used to say the names of UNESCO, World Heritage Center, that look, they have told us, so we are not allowing you. So the simplest thing is they always used to come and ask, what is this core zone? What is this buffer zone? We are not responsible for this. We don't want World Heritage. So simple things like this user interface we developed, where if they enter their survey number, each farmer has his own survey number. Enter their survey number, it used to tell where are they. So today the situation is different. Each and every farmer, this is 10 years back, we did this. Now, today, every farmer, everyone in the local community knows whether they're living in the core zone or buffer zone. So that phase has gone now. Today, everyone is looking for more information. Okay, what is the kind of governance we have for the World Heritage Site? What is the kind of information is available? You have prepared so much plans. Okay, where is those plans? What kind of information can we know? What are the decisions being taken to manage our site? And the third is, okay, there are so many monuments. Not only the local people who are there have their own concerns about protecting the monuments, but also people being a World Heritage Site and a very popular religious and sacred site, everyone across the country and the state would like to know what kind of measures are being taken for its protection, management, and development. Same thing like being a popular tourist site, a lot of investors today wants to know, or a lot of developers want to know what kind of infrastructure they can create for better land use and development. Similarly, like infrastructure, mobility, tourism, and monitoring. So today we are in the situation where we have to provide information for all these 8 categories of work for the better management of the site. And we are looking forward to probably in 6 months, we can show more progress on what kind of information system is being applied at the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarath. Thank you very much. I want to apologize to everyone that we are about 20 minutes late, but actually it's quite okay. So the next point, I will give the floor to HEVA and Laurie, who will talk about the toolkit and the policy report status of the OurWorldHeritage policy and toolkit. Please, HEVA and Laurie, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just would like to ask Laurie, and she's the co-chair with Christina Cameron of the policy committee. So Laurie, please, the floor is yours. So please, you can start. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kay and HEVA. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, good. Okay. So I'm going to give you a bit of context for today's discussions, a little bit of policy talk, some idea of where we have been and where we're going. As HEVA mentioned, my name is Laurie Smith. I'm from Carleton University in Canada. I'm co-chair of the policy committee with Christina Cameron. And as Mario said in his opening remarks, we are part of a much larger initiative, the Our World Heritage Initiative, with 2 goals: to protect and conserve cultural and natural World Heritage sites and to mobilize a global network. Next slide. Not sure. There's my, I was going to say, I've got some fancy lines going. So then our IT theme is one within 12 themes that will host debates throughout 2021. And our individual information technology theme has two goals as well. One is to build a robust global network, and the second is to explore how information technologies can be used for monitoring and presenting World Heritage sites. Next slide. So you've seen this map before. I would say we're already well on our way to achieving that first goal of building a robust global network of concerned actors. At the Globinar 1.0 in early January, there were 900 registrants from 91 countries, 125 panelists, 29 moderators, and then many more that I don't have recorded in the slide at the February webinar, and then today's as well. Next slide, please. So let's take a quick look at where we are now in terms of policy. At the first Globinar in early January, we started to collect information towards formulating some policy recommendations. In early February, we held a webinar, and at that point, we shared with you a draft 6-part policy framework based on what we'd heard to date, and we asked for your feedback. That framework, just to go over it quickly, had 6 key parts: the IT characteristics that would be required for effective monitoring, the IT characteristics for effective presentation, how to effectively share data and information, sustainable approaches to managing IT systems in the larger sense of the word sustainable, how to build capacity for IT, and how to support intersectoral collaboration. And you'll see those themes coming up again today. So today we're at Globinar 2.0 at the far right-hand side of your screen. It looks like we're at the end of our timeline, but that's just the end of the events timeline for the policy group. I feel like we're just getting underway. The first draft of our policy recommendations will be based on your input at all of these events: Globinar 1.0, the February webinar called Moving Forward, as well as today's webinar, and also, most importantly, on the submissions of our global competitors. I was really pleased to hear that input today, and already it's got us thinking about ways we could expand our recommendations. So That's one of the key outcomes of today's event. And we're going to present that in a larger IT theme report that documents what we heard and what are the recommended next steps. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Next slide. So the IT policy team, I just want to show you briefly who's been working so hard on the policy recommendations. The policy team is Christina, myself as co-chairs, and our members, Mario, Haifa, Kamal, Ona, Carmelo, Rashmi, Peace, Dani, Nazi, and Divai. And some of these members, I just want to point out, have been focusing primarily on the toolkit. That's going to be one of our prime recommendations. That would be Haifa, Kamal, Carmelo, Rashmi, Dani, and Nazi. But again, more about that in a minute. I told you it would be fast. So I mentioned that the outcome of all of these events and the discussions and debates would be a theme report on the transformational impacts of information technology. Each of the 12 themes in the Our World Heritage Initiative will be producing a theme report. So the steering group for the initiative agreed on a standard outline that each of the individual themes would follow when they prepare their final report. So that's really important to keep the 12 themes cohesive and standard so that the final report hangs together. So this is the, sorry, I'm still on that framework page, thanks. So basically the introduction will talk about the context, goals, and methodology of the theme. Then the second part will be what we heard, including today's discussions and the considerations that arise in the debate, the issues and opportunities that emerge, ethical, legal, governance, sustainability, improvements, intersectoral collaboration. The third part will be the contribution of IT to the work of our World Heritage, what models or guidance might improve the conservation of World Heritage sites, what kind of training and capacity building is needed. And then the fourth part is the next steps that will advance the IT theme. And we're going to be talking about both the easy steps, the low-hanging fruit, and also possibly more complex things. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So let's go on to the next one. So this brings me back to today's Globinar. Today, we're going to focus on one of our key recommendations, which is to develop an information technology toolkit that will better equip site managers to understand, conserve, monitor, and present World Heritage sites. So we'll be looking from input from participants, keynote speakers, the competition results, the breakout room discussions. Next slide. The breakout room discussions today have been organized around 3 key topics that will form part of that toolkit: capacity building and networking, tools in monitoring and interpretation, and data management. Next slide. So as well as considering those at a sort of a tools level, we also want you to consider what would be the characteristics that would be most important in deciding which tools to use. And you'll have a chance to do that in a couple of minutes. And then the next steps, after today's events, after the rapporteurs have reported back to us on today's discussions, we'll analyze and organize what we heard. And then what we're going to do is see if we can organize a preliminary catalog of tools, apps, data sources, training opportunities, and use those characteristics to describe them. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. You'll also find out more when you get into your breakout rooms about that. And then the other next step is to work on that IT theme report that I mentioned. And then beyond this year of thematic debates, there will be the global report on all of the debates. And then from our perspective, we want to explore potential initiatives for an e-platform. And listening to our keynote speaker today on Panorama, the Panorama platform starts to really clarify for me some of the very large difficulties, challenges, and huge advantages of putting together an e-platform. So next slide. Am I still doing my poll question?
I think yes, Laurie. You just saved us like we're now 10 minutes ahead of the time, so you have 10 minutes to do whatever you want.
Okay, I still have more to say after the poll.
I think we have time enough for the poll.
Okay, we have time for fun. That's good. Okay, well, this isn't quite as much fun as the initial polls, but Joe is putting the poll everywhere link into the chat. So if you can go to your poll everywhere. And this is just an example when I spoke about characteristics very briefly. These are the sorts of things that you might use to evaluate tools. So I want you to just rate them. The list of characteristics that I've given you here is the ones that we are suggesting might be applied to open source data. So how would you evaluate that open source, if you were a site manager, that open source data might be suitable for your purposes? These are the sorts of things. I want you to rank them, the most important at the top, least important at the bottom, and then submit. And you're a fast crew, so I'll give you a few more minutes to put them in. But just to note also, you have the opportunity, if you put in the data management open source data breakout room as your choice, you have the opportunity to discuss these characteristics and say, hey, these are not quite right. You've missed some. I think there should be 8, 9, or 10 of them. It needs to be phrased differently, all of that. So this is just to give you a taste of what we mean by characteristics.
So the interesting thing here is that in the previous sessions, this one was also ranked first, affordable and easy to operate. So the user-friendliness is number 1. Interesting.
That's really interesting. Thanks for that insight. So affordable and easy to operate as number 1. We're still shifting a little bit. We'll maybe give it another 30 seconds or so. Open source data being very important in open source data. Modest infrastructure requirements. These are the sorts of things we also heard in the earlier webinars. The adaptability to the needs of diverse sites, and maybe the different languages or the feature of being updated regularly is not as important to this group here today. So all of these are important. We just wanted to get an idea of your priorities. Okay, we can close the poll. And we'll go to the next slide. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so now I want to focus on one of our key recommendations, which is to create the toolkit for information technology. And I mentioned this before. So we've had a whole task force led by Haifa Abdelhalim working on the possibilities for this toolkit. And we've really devoted all of our breakout rooms today to discussion about those tools. Today we're looking at a very preliminary version. We're trying to sort of start with something small, and it could be expanded later. Next slide. Okay, so this is the vision for the IT toolkit as developed by our task force. It's to create an evergreen, dynamic, and user-friendly digital platform that provides access to data, information, and tools for World Heritage stakeholders in order to support understanding, conservation, monitoring, interpretation, networking, and exchange of good practices for World Heritage sites. You'll recognize a lot of those words from the goals of both the overall Our World Heritage initiative and of the IT theme. And you'll also recognize some of those in the characteristics that you just ranked. Next slide, please. So this is the long-term concept. I think you've seen this before. This is a lot to take in one slide. The long-term concept would be to have an e-platform that provides access to a multitude of sources, including data, planning tools, networking opportunities, tools that would assist in monitoring and interpretation, and resources for capacity building and training. And some of these, such as the grayed out areas here, are a little further in the future than others. And that's why we've chosen to focus on a sort of short-term approach to just attacking some of these. Next slide. So our short-term plan, what might be achievable within the confines of our initiative, would be to set up a digital catalog of tools that could be useful for monitoring and interpreting World Heritage sites. And we could organize these into 3 groups: the capacity building and networking tools, including training opportunities, apps that would allow sites to conduct monitoring and presentation, and we'd also want some examples of those, and open source data that might be useful, again, for building, for inputting into apps. So that's, as I've said, what we're going to work on today in the breakout rooms. So your feedback is super important. The objectives of the IT toolkit. So what we're trying to do is collect these apps, data sources, and training opportunities and compile them in an online catalog and then organize them by characteristic. We want to promote innovative solutions and practices, and we want to look at what are a variety of diverse narratives that could be told for World Heritage sites. Next slide. What's different or what's special or what's most important to us? We want something that's for the most part free and accesses to sources that are for the most part free. We want to be able to keep it up to date. We want people to consider it reliable, and we want it to be accessible. And we really want it to reach a very wide audience. So next slide. And this is just to emphasize the key message here is that all three components are would really work together. They're really interlocked, and sometimes it's hard to say what a particular, which of these three categories something might fall into. So they're all interlocking pieces of a bigger puzzle. We need all of them. Next slide. And as I mentioned, potentially a very wide-ranging audience for this sort of thing, for even this sort of basic toolkit. World Heritage practitioners, including site managers, governments, and other institutions, non-governmental organizations that are working in heritage, technology partners, local residents that are living near or living or working near in World Heritage sites, the academic community, and even business sectors such as tourism. So lots of potential key audiences to think about. So getting back to today's task at hand. So today we've got some sample lists of tools. I think we have panelists who may have brought additional lists, and we're also looking to you as participants to add to those lists. We want you to think about what would be the characteristics you could use to evaluate the usefulness of those tools, how a toolkit might provide those tools. And I've listed 3 breakout rooms. So each is going to focus on a different topic. You're to put the number in front for the breakout room that you want to join. And the 4th breakout room is not on this slide because this is a multi-purpose slide, but the 4th breakout room is the Portuguese language room, and that room has chosen to focus on capacity building. So if you want to join the Portuguese language room, you would put a 4 in front of your name on Zoom. And as I said, each breakout room is getting questions, samples, and characteristics list. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through all these because you'll get them when you get into the breakout room, but these are a sample of the guiding questions, the sample tools next, and the suggested top characteristics. So let's just skip along quickly. Breakout room 2, the same things. And again, you'll get these when you get into the rooms. So we want to leave as much time as possible for discussion. Keep going. Yep.
The moderators of each room will take care of the questions. So it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So rather than me going through it, I really want you to get into discussion because that's really what's going to help the policy committee most of all. So, and then I just want to emphasize again how important it is what happens overall today, what we've heard already, but also in the discussions. We're going to review those discussions. We're going to analyze the tools and the characteristics, both from the discussions and also what we have heard from the competition. We'll organize a catalog of tools, and we'll also be identifying examples of good practice at sites. And then again, to bring you back out to the bigger picture. So we will be putting together the theme report for IT that has the components that I mentioned earlier. We'll be adding that to the theme reports from other debates and contributing to a global report. And somewhere down the line, our vision is still on that e-platform that we would like to reach. So it's always with that sort of in mind that will involve much more resources than we have at this stage, but that's sort of one of our long-term goals. So that's it. So I'll hand you back to Haifa and she can get you into the breakout rooms.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.